What is up, guys? Sonduren Canadian Rider. Today, we're going to be doing a full review of the 4th season of Drive to Survive. I'm here with DRS North. Mike, we're going to be talking about this season. It was a little bit different of a season. Lots to talk about before we head into the new season for F1. And I think the Drive to Survive season is great always as a summary of what's happened. A dramatized summary of what's happened, in the last season.
For sure.
Going up into the new season, we have a whole bunch of new cars. But let's talk about the season. I think the big thing that I took away when I was watching it, number one, obviously the same production quality that I love from all the seasons previously.
Yeah.
But I think it was more Hollywood done production.
A little bit more Michael Bay.
Drama, more Michael Bay for sure. And Netflix had a lot of good content to go ahead and do that with. And the other big change was it wasn't chronological like it was before. It was mainly focused on the teams per episode.
Sure.
So I thought that was interesting to start.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. That was the big takeaway. And like I mentioned, I think it was a bit more Hollywood. And I think that's kind of becoming a trend from season 1 to 4. Every season is getting more Hollywood and a little less fly on the wall. Like I think the first season, they did a lot better job of kind of behind the scenes interviews and all that kind of stuff. And now it's a lot more just dramatized. And
I agree. I kind of wish they pulled back a little bit on hyping up all this drama. I know that that's one of the reasons why Max Verstappen actually, stepped aside from doing interviews specifically for this, which, by the way, as a Max fan, I was kind of like, oh, I kind of wish he was in there, but I see the reasons as to why he's not there.
For sure.
So I wish they actually did take that step back and more of a fly on the wall. But regardless, I thought it was a great season overall. We can start talking about some of the teams and the stories that have happened there. Some of the stuff that I know is probably real. Some of maybe the people and the racers that maybe didn't show up on the show too much. But maybe let's start off with one of the earlier episodes. I don't know which team you want to kick it off with, but I think one of the interesting stories was around McLaren. I think the Ferrari story was interesting. I found out a lot about what's happening with Haas. I'm not the biggest fan of the Haas team, to be honest with you, but we could talk about that. You tell me, Mike, where do you want to start off? What did you find interesting in the first
I'm
episode?
honestly easygoing. I mean, they were all good. I know a lot of hardcore Formula One, long-term Formula One fans had a lot of beef with this season, but I took it for a grain of salt. And I took it for the entertainment value that it wasn't intended to be per se a realistic summary.
Right.
I feel like you always got to be, understand the purpose of the content, and the content was to pull in new fans. And, maybe that's why they did. Hardcore fans didn't like the way they edited this season, but I almost kind of compare it to even for example, Harry Potter, right? People that didn't read the books, but go and just enjoy the movies for what they are. You just take it at face value as a great Hollywood entertainment, right? You can't look at what was missing from the book to the movie edit. It's just, you have to understand kind of where you go with that.
Right. You know what? Okay, since we talked about Haas, let's talk about Haas. They were featured in one of the episodes. What happened with Nikita Mazepin. He's no longer on the Haas team, obviously replaced now. And he was probably one of the highlights of the episode on the team for Haas. I don't know. I felt like, again, I don't know how much of this is actually truly real versus how much was dramatized by Netflix.
Yeah.
But I personally, I was thinking about the team and Mazepin, and while I'm sure he was very talented with his previous, wins in the other divisions and leagues, but it just sounded like to me he was pretty much a spoiled brat that, with the same car that Mick Schumacher had, just couldn't perform. But I don't know. That was my thought personally, and I think he had the most spin outs, right?
Yeah, season. For sure. Yeah, and it was. And that was the funny thing. I almost didn't remember. I remembered how much he spun out and got in accidents, but I remember when I watched a Netflix episode, I was like, wow, it was the first race on the 3rd corner when he had his first wipeout.
Right.
I get the pressure and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of bad press and, PR outside of even Formula One with, women and other things as well. So, I think he kind of went into it with a bad rapport. And I was almost thinking, I don't know if it was edited after, but they made his dad seem like a pretty bad guy, right?
Right.
So I was like, oh, is that edited because of, to make it more reasonable for Haas to do what they did, or?
Right. That's what I was thinking too. And then I thought, obviously the crisis only happened with Russia and Ukraine 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was any influence there in the way probably not. This thing must have been done a while ago. But it was pretty cool to actually see what was happening on that team. I think now, with the upgrade that they've made in the seat, I think there's going to be some chance that they go do some stuff. I know the Haas team has obviously Mick Schumacher, super, I guess, famous. Maybe not super famous, but
Yeah.
he's got that name. But we didn't see too much of him. Like, we saw enough of him. We didn't see too much about him, quite honestly. I hope he does better this season.
And I mean, it looks like at least from the testing, the early testing, that they're actually performing stronger. I mean, obviously they're sandbagging and no one knows really what's going on with the testing, but they seem to be performing stronger. And I think that Mick will have a lot more to learn from Kevin than obviously with nothing from Nikita. So
right.
So I think
that
Kevin,
alone didn't he qualify number one in time trial? Yeah, he did.
And then also he just has more experience, and he's with the team earlier for a couple of years. So I think Mick can learn some things from him.
When was he on the team? Kevin Magnussen.
Right before he was with Roman, right before Nikita and Michael. So I guess that would be like 2020, I think it was.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then even their team internally was like, people. This is why like people don't like him, and apparently he wasn't liked even in the team.
Yeah,
which kind of sucks for him. Like, man, you gotta learn how to work with your team. It's a team sport.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. You're being a dick to your team, like. He kind of felt a bit childish.
But you got the silver spoon spoiled brat right to T, right, where he's kind of like, yes. My dad pays for your salary, so do what I tell you, kind of thing, right?
yeah, that was a bit crazy. I can't believe people put up with that shit. Yeah. Anyways, that was the Haas team, and again, this didn't go chronologically at all, so we're just picking the different teams for the different episodes that we saw. I think obviously the season left Mercedes and Red Bull to the end for the final episodes. That worked chronologically because all the drama between those teams really bubbled up at the final few races of the season and the final episodes. But we can also talk about McLaren. I thought McLaren's story was pretty cool. Listen, I know a lot of people are huge fans of Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris. So let me tell you my opinion, Mike. We haven't talked about it yet. I like Daniel Ricciardo. I just think that he hasn't lived up to his own expectations and the expectations I had of him personally. I think Lando Norris is a stud. I think he's going to be really good in the future, in my opinion. We'll see what happens with this team. This is actually a team, and for fantasy, I picked them as my constructors.
So did I.
Oh, okay. So why did you pick them?
So if we're going into the fantasy side, so for me, I think like you, I'm a Max fan, and I'm a super big Russell fan. So I can't wait to see Russell in the Mercedes. So for me, it was kind of like I needed those two drivers, and then I just had to work my budget accordingly. Right.
So do you think, like when I think about this season, I think about the McLaren team, Lando and Daniel versus Leclerc and Sainz. I don't know who's going to win between those teams. That's going to be a tough match.
I mean, looking at the testings and from everything I've read, I mean, I think Ferrari is going to be a dark horse. Then a lot of people think they even have potential to surprise and maybe even win the constructors. So I think that they're going to do a lot better this year. Like I know last year, I think what was it, they got fourth, but a lot of people think that they'll be like in the top three for sure this year. Wow. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And this year is going to be a little bit different. They have new cars, new tire profile, lots of changes. I think in testing, things have been all over the map. I think Lewis Hamilton, I don't know if he's saying this to trick everybody, is like, we're still far away from making this really successful for the Mercedes team. I don't know how much of that is true, but I'm confident in this McLaren team. I think they have a good car. I think they had some problems in testing, but I like the drivers. I think if Daniel Ricciardo is as good as he thinks he is, this is the season to go ahead and make some, make his mark. And then Lando Norris is obviously, I think he's really talented. Oh, young, he's great.
Up and coming. He's been performing better, arguably, than Daniel Ricciardo. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah. I had Lando last year in fantasy, and he did great for me. So. Right. So I'm curious about that. We'll see what happens. Let's pop over, actually, before we talk about Ferrari, let's pop over to AlphaTauri, that team. I think I didn't know, by the way, Yuki was such a badass for such a small little guy. Yeah, he's awesome. Was that surprising for you? No, actually, I knew for definitely with his potty mouth and everything, and he's a great little guy. And Gasly's one of my favorite too. I love Checo, but I was kind of hoping that he maybe got that second chance in the Red Bull seat. But I understand the attitude of Red Bull. Kind of, we gave you a chance, you flopped. So I don't think he's ever going to see that second seat in the main team. Really? But
Yeah, I think he's better off to go somewhere else and just kind of be the main driver for a smaller team and try to make them constructor champions.
Right. So we talked about Yuki for a second. We said small guy. How tall do you think he is? I just pulled
So
it up.
that I don't know how tall he is. Like, I mean, my guess would be like 5'2", but
Wow. You hit it right on the dot. 5'2".
oh yeah, sweet. I just
It's
guessed
5'2".
based on but the funnier thing, no, I don't know if you know this, but I picked up on this. Do you know what the episode name is for the one that focuses on Yuki?
No, what was it?
Growing Pains.
You know what? Actually, their
So I don't
episode
know if that
names
was
as they
intended to
come.
be like a punny but I noticed it's like,
I think for sure. For sure they were intending to be punny. Yeah, obviously he's super talented. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, super talented. Correct me if I'm wrong. The engine is the same as the Red Bull engine.
yeah, should be.
It's the Honda.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the sister team, right? So it should be
Yes.
the same, and obviously different engineers, and obviously Red Bull's main thing going for them is Adrian Newey, right? The genius that he is.
Right.
But yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, but yeah, Yuki's an hilarious guy. I know when he renewed his contract for this year, he in one of the interviews I watched, he said, "Oh, I was really surprised." And then they were like, "What?" He's like, "Well, I've cost the team a lot of money by the amount of crashes I've done, so I'm
He's crashed a
surprised they
lot.
gave me another, you know."
He's
But
crashed a lot. But I expect, who knows? This team could be an underdog.
yeah,
You know what? A lot of teams this year, different car. It's always kind of a coin flip. I thought it was interesting. Again, I feel like a lot of it was maybe more dramatized in this episode than others, but whatever, it was fine. It was beautiful. And by the way, like during all of these episodes, I felt like the production quality of all of this stuff was really high. Like again, I love the different visual elements they have in this entire series.
for sure.
Like the cockpit camera, I don't know, they have a camera in the track where it's like pointed up. You know that
Yeah.
angle?
Like it's on the corner, some of the corners or whatever. That gets
Yes.
them going over. That's
Yeah, they've done a great job with like the cinematography, and then the drone shots. I'm sure they have helicopters flying over these tracks. It just looks so epic.
Yeah.
Like so beautiful. So all of these episodes are shot extremely well.
And Netflix did a great job with that, but there's actually an F1 video I should try to find. It was on the F1 channel like a year ago, where they actually just did a quick little 5-minute video about like the film crew just for the F1, like just to get the broadcasting done. And it was really
Right.
cool. It went through like the main guy that's in charge of, he's like, okay, cut to camera 16, quickly cut to 13, go to this audio, right? Because they have all the team audios going on, all the cameras going on. And like, how they decide, which battles to follow. Because sometimes they're following, the top two, and sometimes randomly they switch to, the midfield battles. So
Right.
it's quite
Yeah.
the operation to kind of, even for the live broadcast, like who they're going to follow and how they're going to sell the race.
I can't imagine how big that team must be and how complicated it all must be. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like so much is going on at every one moment. Like that's a tough job. Where do you want to switch to, Mike? What was your
Well,
episode? What team do you want to go to?
For that episode, I don't know, the one thing I was kind of like disappointed with is like, for Alpine, they only kind of really focused on, Octon for that. They didn't really talk about anything about Alonso. And
For
it's
nothing for
interesting.
Alonso, really.
And it's interesting because anyone will 100% say that the only reason that Esteban won that race was because Alonso put on one of the best defenses of all time against Hamilton for like multiple laps. Right.
Yes.
So it was, that I think would have been a very good Hollywood dramatic moment that they could have put in the episode that was really missing.
But they didn't at all.
No.
Yeah. They obviously had to make some cuts. Like,
yeah, for sure.
To consolidate. That was one I wish they actually did keep. Fernando Alonso is the reason why Alpine has a chance for any kind of points, in my opinion. I like Alonso more than Ocon, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really cover him too much at all. There was a few segments with him. But other than that, not too much.
But I mean, as a season, you could think of that like Aston Martin, or Alfa Romeo. If you were a new fan, you wouldn't even know those teams existed. There's these two other teams.
Yeah, they weren't covered really at all.
Yeah.
Like besides like little mentions here and there throughout the other episodes, they weren't covered. Williams was covered.
Yeah, they had a whole episode with George, and especially with the whole George Russell versus Bottas and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, they had that. We had some Canadian action there. And then obviously I think the entire season round down to the last 3 episodes, in my opinion, where it started talking about more of the conflict and the relationship with Mercedes and Red Bull and everything. And quite honestly, they had the best moments in motorsport racing to build this season on.
For sure.
Like, how epic was a lot of that stuff. So my turbo driver, my favorite driver is Sergio Perez because he's a god and he did such a great defense to even have the opportunity for Max Verstappen to win, in which now I think about it, Lewis Hamilton got robbed. But he couldn't have even been robbed if it wasn't for Sergio Perez.
For sure.
On the defense. And
yeah.
I'm glad that they put that in the episode. That was one of the big battles there. But again, they didn't really actually have much on Perez.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like his big win and podium stuff like Mexico and Baku and all that stuff. So he had some great moments that could have been in there. But
yeah, and he didn't have it. So I was kind of disappointed about that. Lots on Lewis Hamilton, of course. Bottas as well. And we know Bottas has moved over. But what were your thoughts on like the back half of the episodes then?
I mean, yeah, they were great. And I think the whole story, it really focused obviously on, like you said, the final races. And I'm surprised they didn't really edit it at all about the controversy of that call to only unlap the cars between. And I think it was, what's the name from F1 Sports that kind of spoke to it a bit, saying this isn't traditional. And there was some sport radio from like Science and people saying that's unfair and this doesn't make sense. But like you said, like I think in the end of the day, Max definitely was a worthy champion. I definitely think Hamilton was, robbed of that last race, and they probably even did that for viewing potential to only unlap those 5 cars between them to give, Max even the chance. But I think people that
which is so wrong
for sure. But I think people that try to claim within reason that like Max is an unworthy champion and Hamilton got robbed of the entire championship is, it's a bit miscued because, you have to consider the entire season, all of the races, right? Like,
right.
For example, what race was it? Off the top of my head here, I know there was like obviously Silverstone where he kind of got booted into the wall. There was Hungary, which was like the craziest race of the year, where that was the one where Hamilton was the only one to start on the fresh start, and everyone else went in to change their tires
into the pit. Yeah,
that was also the one that on corner 1, Bottas took out like 5 people, including both, Red Bull drivers. Right. So like there's that race. And then I'm trying to draw a blank here. I think it was Baku that Max was leading by like, 20 seconds and his tire blew out.
Right.
So again, not to like, be like, ooh, I'm the biggest Max fan and Hamilton's not worthy, but I just think a lot of people just say, oh, like he was so robbed. It's like, yeah, that one race was unethical, but there was a lot of you have to consider the whole season.
Right. Right.
And even on that, like the Latifi accident, like you could also think of like, well, why wasn't that just a red flag to begin with? Like, why did it take so many laps of yellows and having to unlap and this and that? We could have just done a red flag, restart, and then see what happens.
I know. So
there
was a lot of that. Yeah, they didn't censor.
That's why Michael Massey's not with them anymore. So
yeah, which I feel bad for him, by the way. Like, I don't know exactly what's happened in the back office with all that. I do feel bad. I think he was put in a really messed up situation. That's tough for anyone. But I feel like the episodes at the back half did a great job of talking about the controversy and the story around that. And obviously it was missing some of that perspective from Max. They didn't interview him, but they had a bunch of like the narrative and story from what he said, I guess, in the past to paint the picture of what was happening.
Yeah.
But, it was funny. Actually, a lot of the episodes were not actually focused on them, but it was focused on the principal constructors or the principals of the teams. So we saw lots of Toto screaming, losing his mind, a lot of that story back and forth. And the principals for all these teams are all integrated in the story just as much as the drivers were.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool, right? There's obviously 2 aspects of this. It's the racing and then it's the money, right? To move on. That's why it's called Drive to Survive. Like all of these racers and drivers are actually driving to survive and driving to keep a seat. Like it's funny to me that Bottas is like proving himself to keep his seat in Mercedes. Obviously, it turns out he was trying to and failed, and he ends up going to another team. But like in my opinion, Bottas is, I don't know about what you think about him, but I think he's underrated. I think he's a very good driver. Yes, he's probably one of the best cars. We'll see how he does this year.
Yeah.
Right? with
I
Alfa
think he's
Romeo.
definitely great.
Yes.
And I mean, I think they summarize actually pretty well in the Netflix episodes that it really comes down to that decision for Mercedes and Toto as like an organization. Do they go with the guy that they know and is going to play nice? Or
Right.
do they take a chance on the young driver, knowing that, how many more years does Hamilton have left? They need
Right.
someone to kind of take that torch. So that's what I'm actually most interested in. Like, I'm a big Russell fan and I'm really interested. Like, is he going to play nice and just play second fiddle like Bottas did to Hamilton, help Hamilton win another, drivers championship? And just kind of be like, I'm here to learn. I'm here to kind of, because I know in 2 years, I'm going to be the guy that's leading this team.
Right.
Or is he going to kind of come in, elbows out swinging, and, it's going to be kind of like a Nico versus Hamilton or whatever. And it will be interesting because, I mean, Hamilton really doesn't have the right to be upset about that if that's the case, because he did it to Alonso when at the start of his career. He came in and said, hey, I know everyone thinks you're awesome, but I'm going to just take all your toys in their mind to keep.
That'll be good to see. I felt bad for him. I think it was I forgot which episode, but they showed his one race where he made the tire decision and was passed by like 5 different people in the final lap, which was heartbreaking for George Russell.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think they obviously in this season set him up and set his story up to know that he was going to be in Mercedes, and look what happened. He's in Mercedes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think the decision was made by the time they were doing all the final edits. And again, you have to understand that Drive to Survive is to get in new fans and, make it seem, put the sex appeal on it. And, George Russell being like, a young, attractive guy, I guess it's the future of Formula One, like Lando and some of the others. They're like, hey, let's push it to get this guy a whole bunch of new fans and bring a bunch of new people into the sport.
Right. So to wrap up, really, I think it was a great season. I think lots of the cinematography that I loved as a video editor, I thought, oh my God, like the visual elements and how they've shot the races and the drivers and everything, primo, all the time. And it's been amazing.
100%. Yeah.
I think the over dramatization of everything is maybe getting a little bit too, like, I feel almost like I'm watching an episode of TLC or some stupid Kardashians TV show. I want them to kind of pull back on that a little bit and take the racing from more of an objective point of view. But otherwise, I thought it was great TV. Like, I binge watched all 10 episodes in one sitting and I was kept in on all of it. And I felt like it got me great to kind of set up with understanding what are all the stories from all these different teams heading into the new season with the next race coming up, starting March 22nd is the next race.
Yeah, well, the next race is this weekend, right? It should be March 20th.
March 20th, sorry. So overall, I loved it. I'm looking forward to obviously what the season's going to bring and then the next season of this episode or this show. But I thought it was really good. I don't know what your thoughts were, Mike.
Totally agree. Loved it. Again, for taking at face value for what it is, entertainment, great cinematography, telling some of a bit of the behind the scenes and drama. I think it delivered in terms of an accuracy of the overall season. Yeah, over dramatized. And if you didn't watch the season, you didn't really get the true story, but that's kind of not the point of the show, I think.
Right. I need to get their camera angles, man. I need to put those cameras in my car like that to make it look that epic. You know what they didn't have actually? Maybe they had a little bit of it. That new angle that they put on, I think, Leclerc's car, right? The POV where they have the camera right in his visor. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. What an epic angle. Like, that just shows you how fast those cars are going and just everything's just kind of shaking.
Yeah.
I would wish to be driving one of those, but we can talk about that in another video. So that was our summary of Drive to Survive for Season 4. If you guys like this video, make sure you give it a like. Also, follow Mike on DRS North. Check out his channel. I'll link everything in the description box down below. Again, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be talking all F1 this season. We're going to be doing these videos and summaries of all the races going forward with our full analysis and breakdown. We'll be doing a lot more videos coming up, so make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.